forward to really move forward with renewable energies, to get rid of CO2 emissions from all sources, this pressure will increase year by year. And one of the biggest important steps is, of course, to decarbonize energy, because the energy is a very important sector of the economy, and therefore quickly replacing fossil fuel-based energy, providing, for instance, from coal-fired power plants, oil-fired power plants by renewables. This is important. Our expectations are that from today installed 1.5 terawatt of PV power will increase by 2040 or 2045 to 50 to 70 terawatt. That means what we have done in the last 20 years will be, at the end of this decade, our annual deployment. We expect in 2030 annual deployment of 1 terawatt or more of new PV. That means the PV market will be larger than the automotive market. The automotive market globally is about $10,000 billion, 1,000, and in 2030 we are at a similar level. So the market is much too important to simply say, oh, everything is fine, we get low-cost modules from one country and we are happy with that. So we need to really make sure that we have a diverse production landscape around the globe, and we are now talking about Europe. So what can we do in Europe in order to re-establish having a renaissance of domestic PV production? We have, of course, enormous challenges due to the price gap between modules produced in Europe and modules imported from China. In China, we have now more than 500, some people say even 1,000 gigawatt of production capacity available, and it's not surprising that if we start in Europe with 1 gigawatt, even 5 gigawatt, we will have trouble. It will take time to really reach the same price level as the importers. And therefore, the question is, how can we bridge this gap? Many off-takers in Europe are quite well aware of this issue. They have signed the European Solar Charter. They have jointly expressed, yes, we are interested in PV manufacturing in Europe. We are interested in widening our source of PV modules. And we have many initiatives, most important the Net Zero initiative of the European Commission, NZIA. We do have initiatives going on, but they are getting very slow. They are in a very complex bureaucratic process, and of course all these initiatives have always to deal with the question, how can we avoid violating WTO rules? Because you know, Europe, and I know it especially in Germany, is very export-oriented and therefore cannot easily say we don't care for WTO rules. The United States is in a different situation, and they simply say, oh, just sue us at WTO. In 5 years we will have the result of this lawsuit, and maybe we will be declared in violation, and then we will have to pay a penalty. But the United States simply goes ahead. We cannot do this, and therefore our hands are tied. And therefore we have designed from ESMC the domestic production portfolio scheme in order to quickly start the creation of a solid and plannable European market for European produced PV modules. So it is a voluntary scheme. It depends on a voluntary agreement among the major off-takers, the major traders of PV modules and cells in Europe, to say, yes, we accept the domestic production portfolio idea in order to support local manufacturing. And how should this work? The starting point is we know that domestically produced modules are much more expensive than imported modules. However, if we start in 2026 with a 5% domestic production quota, even if this 5%, and I will show you the numbers in a moment in detail, is very expensive, it is only 5% of 100%, and therefore it has a very little impact on the total pricing. So as long as the companies can use internal price leveraging, distributing the high price of the domestically produced modules on the total price of their modules which they sell, it has a very minor impact, and I think it can be carried by everybody. And of course, starting from 2026 with a 5% commitment, then in 2027 10%, we have an increasing commitment so that in 2030 we reach the 40%, which is a number which has been given by the EU Commission as a goal for European production, that 40% of our PV market can be covered by own production. And of course, what is very important, this scheme would not need any taxpayer money. And this is a big advantage because right now taxpayers' money is very scarce. There's a lot of problems in Germany, and therefore this scheme is really without this taxpayer money. Okay, we decided, we formed a working group. The working group was formed inside the ESMC from member companies of ESMC, but since 2 months we opened up to any other stakeholder who wanted to join, and it is now the DPP stakeholder group. I would like to invite all of you who are interested to join us in this working group. And we said we should distinguish the domestic content of PV modules produced in Europe. We have the easiest Group A, which only would require that the module assembly and this module assembly based on cells made in Europe. So only the 2 steps, cell production, module production, would be domestic. The Group B already would require that as well the wafers and ingots are from domestic production. And finally, Group C would be those who have the full value chain covered from European production. So we will distinguish these 3 groups. Oh my God, what happened? Can you please make in presentation mode what is going on here? Can you please go into presentation mode? Not at the end of the talk. Sorry, I was on slide number 5. Can we go to slide number 5, please? And in presentation mode, please. Okay, thank you. So now let's see what we designed as the time scale of the DPP scheme. The idea is to start in 2024-25 with the design of the scheme, to work out the exact rules, how should it be controlled, how should it be implemented, and to start in 2026 seriously, to say anybody who wants to be part of the DPP scheme commits to 5% of module sales in Europe based on domestic production. And these can be modules of just the kind A. In 2027 this increases to 10%, and our proposal is 5% of Group A, 5% of Group B. 2028 then 20%, and 29, 30 and 2030 the goal of 40%. The idea behind the scheme is that by 2026, 2027, with the help of the scheme, we have established European production. We have European production in the multi-gigawatt scale, so that in 2028, 2029, the price difference between domestically produced modules and imported modules is disappearing, and therefore it doesn't make a big burden even to have a 30 or 40% domestic part. And we can actually quite easily estimate what will be the cost of such a scheme. Let's start with 2026 with a 5% quota. If we assume a domestic module price right now of 35 cents per watt and the imported module price of 10 cents per watt, of course one can debate all of these numbers, but the main result will be basically the same. And we have we take as an example a company which has total utility scale PV sales of 100 megawatt. Then the cost is 95 megawatt of the imported modules, 5 megawatt of the domestically produced modules, altogether 12.5% more than if it would be 100% imported modules. In the sales, one could of course ask the buyers who want to buy domestically produced modules to pay somewhat more. I put as number 25% more. You know, you can charge a higher price, but you cannot charge double or triple the price. And if we take as an assumption 800 euros per kilowatt of the ready PV system, the system price without DPP would be 80 million, and the system price with DPP would be 81.25. So in other words, we would have just a 1.5% increase of the levelized cost of PV electricity in Europe based on the DPP scheme in the first year 2026. If we go to the second year, we have 10% total sales, take a little bit lower domestic module price, but as well a little bit lower imported module price, which is already a number which we hear sometimes today. And then we can calculate the same, and the result of this calculation is 3% higher levelized cost of electricity. So I would say 1% and 3% higher price for PV electricity is nothing, absolutely nothing, compared to the price of PV electricity if we make border limitations, if we shield away the import of modules. This would make much more severe impact on the price of PV. So in summary, the cost of the DPP scheme is very moderate, can be easily carried, and what we have to create is a public awareness and assumption that really this is where we want to go. And of course, after 2028, we expect that the decreasing cost of domestic production and the increasing percentage of the domestic production quota will counteract so that it stays at a very reasonable level. So altogether we can summarize that we use a similar approach as in the United States for building efficiency. You might not be aware of that. In the United States, building energy efficiency is not detailed in legal rules, but it is administered by a non-government organization, LEED. And today, if you want to buy a house which is newly built in the United States, if it doesn't have the LEED gold label, you will probably not touch it, because nobody touches non-LEED cars. And so the same should be with PV modules, that nobody likes to buy PV modules of sellers who are not part of the DPP scheme. NZIE auctions and any other rules from the Commission and from governments which increase the sales of domestic modules are of course helpful for the DPP scheme, because they make it easy for the companies to fulfill the DPP certification, you know. And the important thing is, if somebody buys an imported PV module from a DPP certified seller, a trader, then all the modules are DPP, and this person knows I have done something to support European PV industry, even if the module is an imported module. And of course, manufacturers can give priority to DPP off-takers, very clear. We can later, when we are sitting together in the stakeholder group, we can define as well criteria for DPP silver, gold and platinum levels, depending on the quality of the modules and on the other factors which we can elaborate. We should start in 2025, and of course we are open to further input from off-takers in the PV market. Of course, social sustainability, footprint, CO2 footprint can be applied to the sales portfolio, a grading scheme which we already mentioned. The EU digital passport is a very common current topic, and of course it is no contradiction. It can be easily integrated with the DPP scheme. And on July 1st, we will have the first completely open stakeholder meeting. To this I want to invite all of you and any other companies interested in this, because we want to be really inclusive in developing the details of the DPP scheme. And then finally, the idea is, and this is something which we have to discuss jointly, to make an official kick-off of DPP at EU PVSec in Vienna in September, when this meeting takes place. This is, of course, at the moment just a suggestion, has not yet been decided, but this is where we want to go. So much I wanted to say about the DPP scheme.
Okay, thank you, Eicke. Just a question, is there someone now